Well, welcome to Pillow Talk. I'm Grant. This is my wife, Stephanie. And after almost 38 years of marriage, we've discovered how to communicate for better understanding and yoke our differences to pull stronger toward a common purpose.
As certified marriage coaches, we want to help reignite passion and connectedness in your marriage through intimate, authentic, and unguarded conversations. Now let's have some pillow talk.
Let's do it.
That's good. All right. Today is a special day because we have two very amazing people with us today. They were our very first podcast that we did with a couple.
Oh, with a couple.
Yeah, not very first, but with a couple. Yeah, we've done this before. I know what you're thinking.
They were the very first stars that we had on.
That's right.
Stars. Oh, man.
Yeah, you guys were legit.
Now, they are the founders of the Ultimate Intimacy app, the Ultimate Intimacy podcast, and we just attended the Ultimate Intimacy Retreat, which was amazing.
Yeah, that was fun.
You don't have to be around them very long to realize they just have a passion to help couples move from that dry, boring marriage to a flourishing, thriving marriage. And they not only have one of the best podcasts out there, it's actually one of my favorites, period.
Thank you.
So, yeah, and it's just awesome, man.
Listen to the podcast and be like, not yet.
So today, Stephanie and I are honored to have this couple who are quickly becoming not only fellow podcasters, but a dear friend. And we just want to invite you and ask you to enjoy the treat that we brought for you today with Nick and Amy McKinley of Ultimate Intimacy. Welcome to Pillow Talk.
Thanks so much.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having us. And we feel the same way about you guys. So
yeah, it's great. I just, it's amazing. And I can only speak, like I said, from my side, but there's just sometimes you just meet somebody and you're just like, this couple's real. And
we want to stalk them.
Yeah, we want to become their stalkers. And so we have officially been following you around. We know where you are.
Well, no, like I said, we feel the same way. When we met you guys, Amy and I both said, oh man, they're special. Amazing. And we look forward to the long-term relationship with you and obviously doing this podcast. So
yeah,
we do too. And can't wait for your next retreat. Just real quick, tell us a little bit about yourself. I mean, you don't have to go too in depth. People can go listen to the last one if they need that. But just what are you doing right now and what's in the works?
I think you better say this because your story might be different than mine.
Why don't you tell the story and then I'll fix it?
I like that.
That's usually how it goes.
Happens.
All right. Well, let me embellish. So Amy and I have been married about 20 years. We actually met on a blind date, and I was a little bit older, but asked her to marry me after about 4 weeks because I just knew I couldn't live without her, and I dated enough people, and somehow she said yes. I don't know if she was just really tired from staying up all night or whatever, but so anyway, so we have 4 kids, ages 18 down to 11, and they keep us busy. And then Amy said for every year I didn't give her another child, she would buy a dog, so we're up to 3 dogs. And so we got a busy household.
That's awesome.
That's a different perspective.
That's pretty accurate.
Yeah, I got that.
You proposed after 3 weeks, so we've been married 21 years almost.
Oh my, yeah.
Stand strong.
Time just flies by so fast.
4 kids and 3 dogs. Yeah.
You'd never guess you could be married that long. That's just it doesn't even seem possible. But I guess to have all this wisdom that you've all pulled in, you had to be married a while. So
yeah, it's been a good ride.
Well, I think our wisdom has come from a lot of tough trials and learning. A lot of mistakes.
I think that's usually how it works. I think it's really difficult to, as much as it would be great if we could, it's really difficult to take what someone else has been through and just, well, they're right. Let me just apply this. Like we almost need to burn our fingers once in a while,
Yeah, for sure.
I think you're exactly right. I think that's so true. And as much as trials are very difficult to go through, I think they can make our marriages and relationships a lot stronger if we allow them to do so. Unfortunately, some people that, is the opposite and causes divorce. But
right.
Man, I think that really got us to the point of ultimate intimacy, so to speak. And obviously it's a journey that we have to keep working on to, maintain that relationship. It's obviously just not like that all the time. Sometimes it's a roller coaster, but I do think it is the trials and struggles that we went through together that ultimately grew us closer together. And I think, really strengthened our love and our marriage and our relationship and makes us appreciate what we do have together.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
So, well, we've been talking about 15 ways to thrive in marriage. And one of the reasons I wanted to have you on for this one was because if I see something in you, it is consistency. It's like you just seem to, just keep every day, now we haven't been around you a lot, but by listening to your podcast, you're always working on it. And to me, if you're going to have consistency and intimacy, it's very important that you don't take a lot of days off,
Yeah,
for sure.
No. You looked at me, you got something?
No, I'm just enjoying the conversation so far. So I think for us today, it's just, we are very curious to let you guys step into the space with us and, to hear what your thoughts are on consistency. And, we talk about the 4 pillars of intimacy, but in relation to that, what comes to mind for you guys when you think about consistency, in the areas of intimacy? Obviously there's more than sexual, physical intimacy, but in all those areas, how does consistency apply? And especially, and as you guys sit in that space so specifically, kind of share with us what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I totally agree. Being consistent in anything that you do, I think is so important, especially in marriage and intimacy. I think, kind of just my opinion on things. I think looking back and seeing kind of the roller coaster and the different trials and things that we went through, a lot of those were caused by inconsistency, right? Maybe we weren't consistent. So I think, being consistent, especially with, something like intimacy, whether, I try to really like hold Amy's hand, open the door, just really do those things. Not, we hear a lot of people say, oh, you do those things when you want something, right? But I try to really do that all the time to show her that I love her and I truly care about her. And it's not just, about I'm in the mood or whatever. Just being consistent, I think, shows that it's a deeper intimacy. It's not just when I want something or, things like that, but the deep love and the connection that I have with her. And so I don't know, for me, it's just trying to always be consistent in everything that we do. And I think the more consistent we are, I guess, the falls and in the roller coaster ride, so to speak, aren't going to be as great. It's going to be more of a steady, I don't want to say boring, but a steady ride, so to speak. So.
For sure. I'd like to add, I think it's really hard to stay consistent when things are really hard. It's easy to stay consistent when things are easy, but it's the hard times that are the very most important. They're all important. But what we're finding with a lot of couples that we're hearing from and working with is there is this game that's being played in marriage. And so what happens is if the wife maybe is the one with the low libido and isn't feeling that emotional connection, because that emotional intimacy is key in a relationship, because for most women, they don't want to connect physically or sexually if they're not feeling safe and secure and literally like fully emotionally connected to their husband. So then they withdraw. So what happens if a husband withdraws sexually? Then the opposite happens. If she withdraws sexually, then the husband stops giving the emotional intimacy and the emotional support and that connection, and that gap just gets bigger and bigger. And so that's the part about marriage that is really tricky, is being unselfish and staying consistent, even when you might not be getting as much as you need of that certain type of intimacy that you feel that you need. So when we were having really rough years in our marriage, you're like 12 to 15, we were missing a lot of emotional intimacy and financial intimacy connection. But I kept the sexual intimacy and physical intimacy really strong in our marriage. And that's literally what kept us together. That is a glue. Because for a lot of people, they withdraw and then the gap gets bigger. The relationship gets harder. They start to fall apart. Other things, trials and temptations start coming in. And the marriage just turns into a disaster. So I think just remembering that you have to be unselfish and caring and put your spouse's needs, even when times are hard, and really communicating about those needs all the time. That's just key.
Well, that was beautiful. And I think one of the other things about being consistent is you have to be constantly communicating.
For sure.
because we can't read each other's minds. If she's feeling a certain way or things are changing or what have you, having that constant communication with each other about, hey, how are you feeling? You know, why are we feeling this way? And what can we do to make things better? And you know, for us anyways, when we can now communicate about anything, right? When we started having those tough conversations.
And it took a lot of practice.
Yeah, but because we can communicate about anything, it's amazing how that really is the key to keep everything else kind of balanced and consistent.
For sure.
When the communication stops, then you're in total chaos.
Right.
That's so good.
That's really good. You know, one of the things that for us, and I'd just like to get your kind of feedback on this a little bit, is it's amazing how, you know, when you're dealing with spiritual intimacy, everybody has said this at one point or another. I know I've said it multiple times, but it's the whole put God first.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the intention to that is right. But something that we started doing that made life so much easier was we removed him from first and put him in the middle. And that's it's really just kind of a mindset thing more than it is you know, you should do this, you know. But there's something about anytime you have 1, 2, 3, 4, and something slips to 2 or 3, and you're like, oh, it should be 1. A condemnation comes over you, you know, and it becomes to me, when I start to feel under condemnation, I either go into one of two modes, and one would be, okay, I got to get this right, got to fix it. But the other one, and probably the one that wins out most, is like, I just can't do this. I can't, you know, can't maintain them there. But by, you know, by putting God literally in the middle of our marriage, that, you know, it's just part of who we are, and putting him in the middle of, you know, how we raised our kids and how just every area, whether it's work or whatever, it just seemed to make life easier. So, you know, I don't know if you've ever thought of it that way, or if that's kind of.
I love that.
Yeah. In fact, you know, we've actually done several articles and podcasts as well, talking about something similar to that. You know, I think for most Christians, if you were to kind of rate, you know, where things are at, most people would say, okay, God's number 1, our marriage is number 2, family and kids number 3, works 4, hobbies, and so on. And I think when a couple has both of those things aligning, it's a lot easier to be consistent, right? It's a lot easier to have things go smoothly. But if for one of the spouses that alignment falls out of whack, and let's say that instead of their marriage coming number 2, it's now work's number 2, the kids are number 3, their marriage is number 4. I mean, just getting that out of whack is just amazing at how it can just throw everything off in the relationship and really, you know, cause inconsistency, I guess you could say. And so, yeah, we totally agree with what you said, and having your things in marriage align with each other about, I guess, you know, I don't want to say priorities because, you know, like they talked about in the retreat, there's really just one priority, right? And so, but, you know, if you were to list what things, I guess, in order, I mean, to me, they should be lining up.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, I like the priorities too, because there is only one priority. And to me, that's what makes it, when you try to put it 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
So difficult, because some days work is the priority.
You're right. You're right.
And so immediately that's where I would start to get in that condemnation of, man, I ain't putting God first. Stephanie sure ain't first. You know, I mean, our work schedules are really weird. You know, like I work very early till 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. She works mid-morning till 6 or 7 o'clock at night. You know, so a lot of things just seemed like it was very hard to be consistent, because we were trying to maneuver things that ain't maneuverable, you know, at times. But when we literally made each other as, you know, as our, I like to look at it like a tire, you know, God is the hub.
Yeah.
And Stephanie brought up yesterday when we were talking about this, about inside the hub is where they keep the bearings. And you're always saying, man, I just feel like I'm losing my bearings in life. And, you know, so if you keep God as the hub and in that center, and then the spoke, you know, we did the 4 pillars of intimacy, but I heard you all mention the other day, and I'd like for you to expound on that a little bit. There's actually like 12 or something like that. So you have those spokes going out there, and to me, what stress does, what life does, is it reveals to you where the flat spot is on your tire. It's amazing. You can have a tire that's totally flat or just a little low, and it looks full everywhere, but where all the pressure's at.
Yeah.
Yep.
I like that.
That's good.
Yeah. So true.
I was going to add, I think that when we put God first and actually keep him as the priority, the other things already kind of come into a certain balance. Mm-hmm. Because when God is first, you're doing your career, you're working for your family, you're still putting your family as one of the biggest, most important things in your life, right? Mm-hmm. So I feel like when God is first, everything just kind of falls into line.
Yeah, your purpose for doing everything else is centered around, God and the right reasons versus maybe the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and I love what you guys said earlier about, consistency and serving each other. And I think consistency does revolve around servanthood. And when you think about if God is central, well, Jesus was the most amazing servant, right? And I think if you adopt that mindset that God is central in your life, and as that flows out of you, what flows out of you is his unconditional love. And that's going to be expressed in everything that you do. So when you're doing that, you're automatically serving. And so whoever is the priority or whatever is a priority of that day or that part of your day that you've already assigned, you're doing that in consistently as a servant. They're going to feel way more connected. There's going to be way more productivity in that space, on that spoke. And then when it does come time for those parts of your week where there is physical intimacy, it's not like you have to hurry up and get into that space. It's you already have the mindset of serving because that has become your lifestyle. I think that's what consistency does, is create an overall habit of being a servant. And then we get less self-focused. And when we get less self-focused, we're serving. And then when we're serving, guess what? Our needs get taken care of. It's kind of a weird little, paradigm, but I think that's kind of what we've discovered.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, I think you hit that right on.
Yeah, so on that vein, knowing that in order to get what you want, you got to give what they want.
Mm-hmm.
What has been your, what you've noticed in different conversations and stuff? What can people do? What is a practice? That's the word I'm looking for. What are some practices that you can do that will help you get the intent out there so it doesn't feel like manipulation? If every time I touch her, I want sex, and don't get me wrong, that's close to true.
Sure. And I think for most men it is, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're physical touch. We're built different. We're wired different.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that I have to have that. And I don't want her to feel like I have to have that every time I touch her. So is it just not making advances? Or, have you talked to a lot of more professionals than we have. You're about as professional as we've gotten so far. So
no, I don't know. I think, in our experience, in our relationship, I think one of the biggest things we hear is, oh, my husband only touches me or moves forward and advances things when he wants something. We hear that all the time. And I think as men, in a lot of ways, we are wired that way. One of the things I've tried to do in our relationship is like I said, hold Amy's hand, open the door, text her, just, whatever, just to constantly let her know how much I love her. Now, Amy's and my relationship, I will say, is probably different than a lot of other couples. We joke about this all the time. I maybe have some tendencies or some things that are maybe more like towards what a woman would want, right? Like we get done making love and I'm the one that wants to like snuggle her, right? And she's totally good just rolling over and going to bed. Like Amy is
he's the one that wants to hold hands. Like he's like physical touch. Like I'd be fine if you just touched me on day 4. It's fine.
Yeah. So our relationship's a little bit different just because Amy is not a physical touch person.
But I feel secure in so many other ways because I get all those love languages constantly. So I feel like that's like I'm already okay in the relationship and I feel secure and I feel loved. So I'm okay with the fact that I know how he works and how his body works and that he has needs that I maybe don't have as much of. And so it works for us. So, but that takes that's taken a lot of communication.
And that's what I wanted to hit at again. I know everyone gets so tired of hearing, communication, but let's be real. Like for most couples do not communicate. We cannot tell you how many people contact us and say, I really wish, we could connect this way, or I really wish my wife would do this, or my husband would do this. And the first thing we say is, well, have you asked him or have you talked about it? 90% of the time it's like, no, I'm scared to. We're like, how in the world can something get better if you're not willing to talk about it? Right. And your spouse may not even know that you're feeling this way. And so it sounds like such a simple thing, but it's amazing how many couples do not do it.
But we didn't do it well until 5 years ago when we started having really, really hard conversations. So I can fully say that we have been there. It was rough.
Yeah.
We didn't know how to have conversations around sex. We didn't know how to have conversations about emotional needs. I already told him what I needed. Why doesn't he already know that? Why doesn't he read my mind, right? A lot of women feel like that. Can't you see that there's dishes all over the kitchen?
My husband should know what I want.
Can't you see that the house is a mess, right? And then we get frustrated. And all it takes is, Nick one day is just like, I'm so willing to do anything for you. I'm kind of don't even notice stuff sometimes. Could you just tell me what you need and just ask, and I will totally love to do it for you. And I say that all the time to women,
and every day is different, right? Your needs might be different every day. So I just told him, I'm like, just tell me what you need. Hey, sweetie, could you go pick up the kids? Or hey, sweetie, I need you to take care of dinner tonight, or whatever.
And he's awesome.
Yeah. As men, sometimes I think we just need to be told, hey, here's what I need your help with, or here's what I need from you today. And it really is as simple as that. And I think a lot of women feel like, well, I shouldn't have to tell him what, I need. He should already know. But if you can just drop that silly thing and just open up the communication, it really does change everything. Mm-hmm. I really believe that almost any issue, look, I understand there are some, but that you can't, but almost any issue in a marriage can be resolved with good communication. When you're both talking, and part of that is listening, right? Yeah. And saying, hey. And
caring.
Yeah. This is what I heard you say. Am I understanding this correctly?
But if you have God as your priority in your life, you're automatically going to care, right? Like you said.
Yeah, I'd almost say that you could change it to all if you'd say that sometimes the communication is before and not after the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, it should be.
Because you should be able to ward off almost everything. And if you don't get it warded off, then you should be able to communicate about it and get it fixed then. I mean, communications, it's everything. It is what our relationship with God is, why shouldn't it be different with your spouse?
You're exactly right.
I loved what you guys said just a minute ago. I think it bears kind of diving into a little bit, because sometimes we get used to, in the marriage space or in our culture, of just, we got to talk about it. We got to talk about it. And like what you said, well, we had a discussion and we sat down for counseling, and I told you that I need help with the dishes. Well, if that's not something that's something that you're used to, a spouse is not going to remember that. And I like what you said about it's daily, and it's not even consistently communicating those things, but it's actually finding the meaning of that action. That's going to be vital to staying consistent. Because if I just tell Grant, well, I wish you would just help me with the dishes. Well, then it's just an action. But if I allow him to see what the meaning is behind why that helps me and why that's so important, then he's probably going to be more aware of it. Because you said, I don't even know what needs to be done. And that's very true. We've had that conversation. Mm-hmm. So when I began to assign to him things, the way I assign meaning to why that was important to me, then all of a sudden it's not a pile of dirty clothes on the floor, or just pick your socks up, like I'm just domineering and telling him what to do. All of a sudden it became clear to him, how come that was a stressor for me? And then all of a sudden, if that's all he did, there could be 25 other things I don't care to do. But if he is aware and starts to step into those one or two things, but it is assigning that meaning, finding that meaning together so that you can stay consistent. And then those little pieces, even if it's, they do change a little bit. And sometimes it's, hey, this is a crazy week. So here's a couple of things, that I need help with. Which one do you think you would like to help me with? Instead of just telling him, hey, I need you to do the dishes. It's like, well, I have to do this, and this. So because I can't get it all done in one specific time, where can you help me with that? And that has been great in our conversation. So I don't feel like I'm telling him what to do, because I know a lot of guys, especially in the beginning of that season of figuring this out, it's like, all of a sudden it's nag, 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 nag. Even if he's saying, what can I help you with? Then it's like, hey, I need help with the dishes, or hey, I need you to mow the yard.
Yeah.
Well, it's all about how you communicate it too, not just in the communication.
Yeah. Words have meaning.
Totally.
And it's, I think a lot of men are like, I just left my mother. I don't need another one. And so I've been told what to do, so it's hard to be consistent with doing things your spouse wants because she's telling you instead of asking you. Like you said, I think all we want to do is help. But we have to feel like we're helping and not being bossed around doing it.
And sometimes for women, that emotional connection is, I know you want to help, but sometimes what's most helpful is that you see it and do it without me having to ask. So that's kind of that gap, right? So, but you got to say that. You got to talk about it. And it's like, why don't you write these things down? He's actually made notes of things that were very impactful for me. So then he does it without me having to tell him. And then I don't go back in there and do it myself because I don't like the way he did it. That's huge. But yeah, I mean, sometimes that's the emotional security. Is it would be nice to feel like you are involved in my life. For some women out there, I'm sure that's very impactful. So guys, hear that. Sometimes it's doing it on your own. That's the big thing. Not how you do it or when you do it, but doing it.
Yeah. And what you're saying leads right into consistency on how important it is to always be figuring out and speaking each other's love languages. Because when we're talking about dishes, that would be an act of service. But to someone that's not their love language, that's not going to mean anything to them, right?
Yeah.
So like staying on top of what your love language is, taking the quiz, making sure you're talking about it all the time. We talk about it in our marriage all the time because I feel like, and I don't think most people realize this, but okay, you could take a quiz and a year later, you're kind of in a different stage of life. Maybe you had a baby or a new career or something happened. Yeah. And I feel like your love language changes to the thing that you're missing in that stage.
That's good.
So consistency on serving each other is always changing by meaning, depending on what your love language has changed to. And I just think that's really important. Even sometimes monthly or every couple months, we noticed, I'm like, I get a lot of things from Nick, but I'm like, that's not my love language because you already give it to me. So I just think it's important that you're always talking about that because that's just such a big part of marriage.
Yeah,
that's
so true.
I like that. That's a great awareness, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like to, the back to the communication because it seems like that's for everything. Like Stephanie's love language is words of affirmation. Well, you would think that means hey, you're doing such a good job. Thanks for dinner. That's not it at all for her. Hers is.
I'm a little difficult.
She's extremely difficult because it's not that you appreciate her. It's why you appreciate her. That means something to her.
Deeper.
Yeah. It's much deeper. And if you can't give that, she can even go to like a women's conference and speak. And, if people come up and say, that was excellent, doesn't mean nothing to her.
Yeah.
She's going to say, well,
it doesn't love me. It doesn't make me love.
Well,
I appreciate it, but it doesn't.
I'm always a little harsher than she is, but.
Well, I mean, it's just, I want to know what it was that added value because my heart is to add value. So when somebody affirms this is why that meant something to me, then that helps me to love them more. Or that helps me to pour into their life better. So that's what I'm all about is making it better for somebody else.
So is there anything else that you would like to kind of start wrapping this up with that's kind of been on your mind in this area that you can?
Well, I think just talking about communication too, it's so important to communicate about intimacy or sexual intimacy as well. I think because most spouses are different when it comes to that, being able to talk about that openly, you have different desire styles or different, a high desire spouse, a low desire spouse, really having that communication and finding that balance. What are those barriers that are keeping couples from having great sexual intimacy and really having those discussions? So,
and I would probably add, when it comes to communication, organization. I feel like when we're organized, like on a schedule, calendar, however you want it, like a family weekly meeting or a couple weekly meeting, laying out the week, kind of figuring out who's stressed out, where do you need to help each other, planning your date night, planning your intimate time. Like there's probably certain nights a week that work better. When it comes to intimacy, sometimes scheduling it needs to be done. Sometimes initiating, even if you're the lower drive, helps you to figure out your day so that you can not be too tired or get yourself mentally in the mood. There's just lots of things when it comes to just being organized and scheduled in your life, and then communicating about those things just helps in so many ways.
Yeah,
I feel like
usually at the first of the week, we'll kind of lay out our week and say, okay, the kids have stuff here, and kind of lay things out. And then it's a lot easier for me to look at that and say, okay, I know I need to be here at this time, or I know Amy's going to need help at this time, and really
like I teach,
be consistent.
Yeah, like I teach some classes on Monday, so he takes care of dinner on Monday. Like when you communicate about those kind of things, it helps, like you said, me to feel loved, because I don't know, we're just on the same page. And I just feel like everything flows better in your marriage instead of when someone's not stressed out, because stress is such a big killer, and busyness is such a big killer for intimacy right now. So many couples are overloading their schedule or just taking on too much. Us women are so good at that. And sometimes we just need to look at our calendar together and step back and be like, how do we simplify? Because if God and marriage are really like our big focuses, we have to cut stuff out so that those can still be our focus. Look, it changes everything.
Well, I mean, you hit on it. I think distractions too are one of the biggest intimacy killers, and also I think really, kill consistency as well.
For sure.
It's amazing how many people are just so addicted to their devices or doing things to keep them distracted in other ways that are then having significant impact on the relationship and physical intimacy and things like that. Mm-hmm. Not to get too much into it, but we had a gentleman on that was writing a book talking about the impacts of like social media and our devices and things like that. And the stats that he was reading were astonishing. Mm-hmm. I mean, like the percentage of people that were actually checking their device while they're making love, and the percentage of people that would actually rather lose a limb or their finger was over 50%. They would rather lose a limb or finger than give up their device. Or people would, over 50% would rather give up sex completely than their phone. And so just the distractions that are starting to get into people's lives, it's astonishing. Yeah, just crazy.
What?
So,
well, I almost died when I heard that too. I was like, wait, what? Somebody checks their phone while they're making
sex?
I was like,
it was a higher percent than you would imagine.
I just think that can't be right. That can't be right.
I'm like, that is not possible. That is not. Yeah. No one's ever done that. And then I had a guy write me and said, yeah, my wife did that. Or does that. Yeah. And so these things that are like sound crazy, they're happening. And we have got to we got to say goodbye to the phones at a certain time of day.
So that's it.
And that is 100% why we do the podcast and everything that we do, is to help people, because we had no idea that there were that many people that were struggling with, different things like this. And those are big things that are going to keep couples from finding that ultimate intimacy in their relationship. And so that's why we do what we do. And you too, I'm sure.
Yeah. Man, that is shocking. One thing I just thought of that this back to again communication at the conference, the retreat, and there was a couple there that he asked the question, how can I help my wife emotionally?
Mm-hmm.
And immediately they go and ask her.
Mm-hmm.
Which was so amazing. Yeah, and it's like, well, if you don't know, how can he know? And I just thought,
which is revolutionary and basic. I think everybody needs to hear that, because it's okay.
But I said it. He's asked me, what do you need? I'm like, I don't know what I need.
And I think there's a lot of couples that feel that way. They're frustrated and they know they need something, but they don't know what they need. And so you're trying to communicate about it, but
for sure.
But then that helps that spouse.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you don't know, let's talk about this, because I want to connect with you emotionally. So I want to help you know what makes you feel emotionally connected. That creates a safe space for, if it was me,
right,
that would create a safe space for me, knowing that he wants to help me figure out what I want.
That he genuinely cares, right?
That he cared enough.
Mm-hmm. That's what really matters.
That was powerful. So
and that's literally across the board. It doesn't matter in whether it's the kitchen, the bedroom, the living room, wherever. If one doesn't know what they're looking for, there's no way for their spouse to provide it.
Yeah.
For sure.
You know, it's and more than likely with most couples, because some things are very taboo, and you know, but you know, it's at least saying, you know, not in the middle of, hey, this sucks, you know, but it's saying when you're done, you know, with whatever it is you're doing again, but let's just say it's the bedroom, you know, in a nice way, just like, you know, something about that just didn't feel right. You know, and do it in a nice, loving way and say, you know, maybe next time try this. You know, it's no different than saying, you know, that spaghetti just wasn't as good as it normally is. Maybe next time you ought to put some seasoning. You know, I mean, saying it in a nicer way than that for sure.
For a lot of people that have listened to our podcast from day one, I mean, that's what Amy did. She's like, I need something else in the bedroom.
I
need
did
something else.
You're 15. Just put it on the table.
Yeah.
I totally offended him.
I was like, really? Like,
wait, what? Wait, missionary every night's not okay? No.
But I'm rocking this. How can you need something?
Yeah, but again,
I kind of offended you though.
But having that communication. So first, I was like,
wait,
yeah, I was a little offended. I'm like, oh, okay. But again, as we started talking about things, then and that having that communication, then things got even a million times better, right?
Sometimes you just have to rip off the Band-Aid and fix the problem. And it's going to hurt at the very beginning, but then you start having conversations, and Nick can like honestly say now our marriage has been changed because I said, I need more in the bedroom. I am bored. I just had to flat out say it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think it was a miscommunication because I was like, okay, if I bring anything up, is she going to think I'm like looking at porn, or where am I getting these ideas or things like that? So I was just, you know, happy with the fact we were, you know,
actually
having sex, because a lot of couples aren't. And so
a lot of couples aren't.
Anyways,
it's really sad.
I think, you know, there's a battle between like literally good and evil. And I think evil is trying to destroy marriages out there. And it's amazing all the different ways that maybe 15 or 20 years ago, marriages didn't have to face or didn't have to battle. And now we have, you know, technology and these time wasters and all these different things. And it is amazing how we literally are fighting for our marriages. You know, and evil is trying to destroy marriages out there. And so again, the reason why we just are so passionate about doing what we're doing to try to help people in their relationships.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I just want to remind our listeners and viewers, you know, you guys, that app is, if you use the excuse of, well, you know, I don't want to go and look up stuff because, you know, I don't know. You don't have that excuse anymore. This app is amazing for that. There's things that's very tasteful. It's very classy. It's very safe. It's just, you know, I was a prude growing up, and that's fine. You know, so I'm speaking from a place of I'm not a person that just wildly likes to look and dive into all that stuff, right? So it's a very safe space to get some information, to have some conversations with your spouse about some things. There's conversations in there that you can kind of work through and things. So that you don't have an excuse anymore, which is the beautiful thing of technology now. You guys have technology, which is being used in a different way, but you're taking it and using it to help strengthen marriages. So if you're listening and you haven't signed up and downloaded their app, that's the first step for you. That's the first step. It's it's a safe, and it's a fun step that you can do to start adding a lot of dimension to your marriage life, to your intimacy. And it's not just sex in there. That's the thing. It's not a sex app. It's an intimacy app, because there's more than just that. And I love it. So yeah, you guys go out there and sign up for it.
Yeah. I mean, there's even if you want to send your spouse a little naughty text, you can do that in there, which is awesome, because there was a time I worked for a Christian company, and I sent Stephanie a little naughty text to our HR department.
That to me. I didn't get the text or the message. They did.
It's good to know that you've got a place to go, that there's no chance in the world the HR department is part of your thread.
Or your kids aren't going to see your phone.
Well, you're exactly right. And one of the reasons we added those features in there is sometimes it's really hard to start a conversation, right? Especially about a tough subject, where you can go in the app, and if you're reading the question off the app, it's the app prompting the discussion, not you. And it makes it really easy to say, okay, and read it to your spouse and just really start the tough conversations, and it just prompts you to do so and gives you the ideas. And we have so many different subjects and questions. So, if you're struggling with, emotional intimacy, obviously we have questions based on that. If you're struggling with talking about things in the bedroom, we have a section on that. And so I think it just really helps people become a lot more comfortable getting those conversations started.
And just having more fun too.
Yeah.
More fun.
You guys need the language, and you guys give the language, and that's what I like.
Right.
It's just helping people to speak that language better.
Yep, for sure.
Well, guys, thank you so much. We can't tell you how honored we are that you take time out of your schedule for us.
Thank you so much.
It means the world to us. Like I said, we expect big things going forward with the friendship and the relationship as well. And I told you, everybody, that you would love this. It's great. So thanks again for being on Pillow Talk with Grant and Stephanie. And until the next time we get to have you all on, until the next time for our listeners.
Let's, you guys want to share your social media platforms real quick, just so people are listening, maybe haven't become familiar with you yet. Please do that.
Yeah, we're just on Instagram at Ultimate Intimacy app. And that's the best place for social media.
Yeah, or ultimateintimacy.com is where you can go on the website to learn more about everything, the retreats, the app, products, read good blog articles.
Yeah.
And so I'd say those are two main places, right?
Yeah.
ultimateintimacy.com and Ultimate Intimacy app.
Yeah, no, it's great. We want people to go there and start getting hooked up and getting blessed on that. So.
Absolutely. So you can tell the reason I keep her around. It's not just because she's beautiful, it's because she remembers everything for me. So
thank you for that word of affirmation.
She
loves me for my mind.
For mine. That's just one reason. But
well, thanks so much for having us. We are so honored to be on there.
Absolutely.
Thank you guys. We appreciate what you're doing very much.
Yeah, you all are changing lives.
Yes,
That's what's cool. That's what's cool about having you here. We get to tab. We really like to find somebody or some organization that we couldn't do things if we didn't have them. Mm-hmm. And so we feel that way about you. We feel that about our friends, Greg and Julie, that, co-friends here. And, to get to be able to tap into something that's bigger than you, that's doing things for the kingdom it's just an awesome place to be.
And to be able to share it.
I would feel the same way.
So thanks again. And now we will wind this down with join us next week on Pillow Talk.